Widows is directed by Steve McQueen and stars an all-star cast including Viola Davis, Michelle Rodriguez, Cynthia Irevo, Daniel Kaluuya, Liam Neeson, Colin Farrell, John Bernthal, Elizabeth Dabicki, the list goes on. The story follows the widows of 4 criminals who die in a job gone wrong, and unfortunately for them, their last mark is a big-time crime lord who also happens to be running for mayor. His money is gone, and he wants the money put back, so Viola Davis's character, Veronica, decides the best way to come up with the money is to complete her late husband's next heist with her fellow widows. I was really excited for this film as I am a big fan of Viola Davis, and I believe Michelle Rodriguez is a much better actor than she is given credit for. Throw in Cynthia Irevo, who was highly impressive in Bad Times at the El Royale, and I am more than hyped for this film, as I figured it would bring something new to the heist genre. The problem is this film not only constantly changes its approach, but also seems to borrow a lot from plot threads of GTA 5. Getting into it, I will say there are a lot of good arcs within the film, with standouts being the character arc of Alice, who is always being beaten and victimized, and the dynamic between the 2 political candidates, Mulligan and Manning. The amount of development and growth we see Alice go through made her easily the most likable of the characters, and seeing her apologizing for things that she shouldn't be all the time, and growing as a person and learning to take the fight back to her tormentors is really enjoyable. The political side plot as well had a really strange dynamic, where both candidates are assholes, but they both have their vulnerabilities and motivations on why they want to get to where they want to be. There is definitely an adage of public and private faces here, and that storyline impressed me, as the beginning of the film gave me the impression that it would just be a rich, white, entitled arsehole versus a minority working his way up to get out of a bad life. But this film strips that generic concept and piles on some really interesting dialogue exchanges, and the interactions between said characters are some of the highlights. Also, the 4 widows' chemistry works really well when things actually got going, and the heist itself was an enjoyable affair. But honestly, it was a lot simpler than the convoluted heist we are used to seeing in this day and age, and that was a nice change. The film clocks in at around 2 hours and 10 minutes, and honestly it takes its sweet time getting anywhere. There are a few things that could have been cut, and some of the developments don't really gel in the story. There are a couple of things in the middle with Viola Davis's character that honestly felt forced and lazy, and the sad thing is those moments are starting to feel a bit cliche. Also, there is a sex scene that goes on longer than it needed to be, as there is very little established during its time. There are many parallels to the GTA 5 story, and as much as I love Viola Davis, she is beginning to be typecast as different variants of Annalise Keating, her character in How to Get Away with Murder. Seriously, she is getting slapped in every movie. The political side of the film is never fully committed to, despite the amount of time we spend with the 2 candidates. It feels like a letdown in trying to get us invested in these characters. It seems there was a genuine desire from both sides to make positive changes, but when they are displayed to be assholes, they are well and truly assholes. The film also wastes Daniel Kaluuya as the brother of the Manning candidate. This character is so casual in his sadisticness, and the film tries so hard to build him up, but in the end it all leads to a lackluster finish for the character. After all the build, including a questionable bit of cinematography that was clearly meant to heighten the tension and make the audience uncomfortable, but in all honesty that shot just made me dizzy, and I felt it was a much better way to establish that character. Speaking of the cinematography, it tries too hard to be clever and is very old school at times, but I don't believe it gelled well with the tone of the film itself. And it's topped off with one continuous shot as Mulligan goes on about his aspirations in the privacy of his car, and all that drew attention to was the fact that the film is trying to make a point, but it has no idea what that point is, and it is honestly baffling with how much time the film spends saying nothing. The only major shining light in this film are the performances. For all my hype about the other 3 widows, I actually enjoyed Elizabeth Dabicki's performance the most as Alice, with just how well she plays this victim, just going along with what people tell her to do, even though they are treating her like absolute shit the whole time. Cynthia Irevo wasn't this as much as I would have liked, but when she arrives on the scene, she owns every scene she is in, and quite frankly, she outperformed Viola a few times. Viola Davis is, as I said earlier, very typecast, but honestly she does that role superbly well. And Michelle Rodriguez, who is easily the best actor in the Fast franchise, is giving her time to shine, and whilst I would have liked a little more from her, she does sell a performance really well. Daniel Kaluuya, whilst I hated how his character was written, he did a really good job with what he was given, and managed to bring some menace to what was otherwise a very hammy character. Colin Farrell is fantastic as Mulligan, and is so good at portraying the stress that politics really brings to a person, and I truly brought into the fact that part of him just wanted an out. Liam Neeson's here too, and honestly he was disappointing. His character really needed his own movie, because there are some questionable moments with his character that make little to no sense. And I just realised, as I'm writing this, the film has a lot of inconsistent characters, and I think that's why I'm not raving about this film as much as everybody else is. There is a lack of consistency with the story, characters, and underlying messages and themes, and all the amazing stuff in this feels less because of that. And honestly, this feels Oscar baity without all the telltale signs of being Oscar bait. And that's a shame, because with a cast like this and the original concept and premise to bounce off, it's all just wasted making something that should have been great, just needed more sugar. So Widows, has everybody seen it? If you have, let me know what you thought down in the comments below. Hit the round subscribe button for more reviews coming on time. This is the Spikehead Podcast, signing off.